So after you open a brand new compose project and you pick an empty project, you'll get this default setup here. And the first step we're going to take is actually to delete the default composables that this comes with. Leave the greeting here. And what we're going to do is repurpose this into a column. Okay, it's going to throw this warning. Well, after we import it, go ahead and use Alt plus Enter to make that quicker. We're just going to get rid of this because it's going to throw a warning because that's a additional field that the actual column doesn't have. And then we'll go ahead and add the curly braces to let it know that we're about to add more content, which should satisfy the warning that you get there. Then we want to actually put a button on here, and it's going to complain because the buttons need an on click in order to be considered valid. So just give it a blank on click for now. You can go ahead and just leave a to do. This is sort of my workflow. I just leave to do notes, add on click, in order to just make sure that I'm not leaving some of these fields open. And then in here, we want to put in the actual content of the button. And so we can just put a text composable and just put whatever text you want in. So I'm just going to put dialog test button. And so the way that these composables usually work is that you want to be able to have some kind of a variable to control when and how the alert dialog shows me. So we want to, within the brackets of this composable, because these variables are set here. So I'm just going to do it up here. Normally we'll do it with something like a view model, but for the purposes of this this tutorial, we'll just say var display alert dialog. Okay, and we're going to do this by remember, and we're going to turn it into a mutable state of, and then we're going to start false. Okay, and you might have to import this. Well, 9 times you'll definitely have to import this, double import. And so what this is essentially saying is that you want a mutable state of Boolean, and you want it to be remembered by the composable. You want it to be remembered by the composable function so that it doesn't recompose unless this variable has changed. Now, quick warning, it will reset to false if you change like the orientation of the device. So if you're holding it and you have like its ability to change from portrait to landscape, it'll change itself upon you switching that screen around. So I'll show you that example in a second. So now what you want to do is you want to actually create the alert dialog itself. So within the column, well, actually outside of the column, we want to do this in the scaffolding. It doesn't need to be inside of the column. We can do if, and this is where you're going to insert that variable we just created. If that's true or false, which is in this instance is a false, then we want the alert dialog to show. And now it'll tell you that it's not valid, but you just have to follow along and make sure that you get these individual fields going. So on dismiss request, basically, what do you want this box to do once it is dismissed? And in this simple example, all we really want it to do is we just want to reset this back to false. It's false already. So when you set it back to false, it'll give the compose. When it recomposes the screen, it'll tell it to go ahead and hide it, because if it sets it to false, it checks the statement, it sees it, it hides it away. Pretty simple stuff. Then you want to go ahead and hit that comma, and then you want to add the next one, which is the title. All right, this is also again treated as a composable field. So within the title, you can go ahead and just use a composable text, which is what we've been doing already, and you can just say test alert dialog. That's it, simple. Add the column back here, drop back down, and we want to go ahead and define what we want the confirm button to look like. You can use a normal button, but because we've already used a normal button and I'm sort of in the mood to do something a little bit different, we're going to just use a elevated button instead. And here we're just going to leave this clear again, and same as before, The content of the button is a composable. So you can put whatever you want. You can put an icon, you can put whatever. But in this instance, we'll just stick to text, keep it simple. And we'll say, just confirm, right? And I think that should be, yeah, that should be good. You don't need a content there. So go ahead and erase that. That was my bad. So up here, we actually want to turn the display dialog to true. And so the general idea is, and I get for right here, for confirm, you might want to copy and paste that. I'm just going to type it over again because make sure that we're not missing that. And then we'll run it. And this should get you your very, very basic setup for your composable. Just going to wait on that to load. And so when you hit the dialog test button, the dialog comes up. And when you hit outside of the dialog button, remember this will run, setting it to false. So if you click anywhere out of it, it'll get dismissed, right? Because we're just simply setting it to false. Compose is smart enough to see that you're changing the mutable state of that it's trying to remember. So then it'll go down here and say, okay, well, now I have to hide it. Same thing for the dismiss button, same code, same logic. Now, before I had mentioned like the difference between remember and remember savable. So if I click this and we have the dialog button up and then we rotate it, it'll go away. And that's because it is not remembering the state of the dialog, the true or false, when it has to reorient, when it has to change sort of the portrait landscape, like the modularity of that screen. So what you want to do instead, let me rotate it back around. Cool. Is refresh it. And this time, because we made it remember savable, which is a little bit more process intense, and usually you wouldn't want to use it unless it is something that would affect the user experience, which you could argue whether or not this simple alert would affect the user experience. And I think phones are getting better and better to the point where maybe it's not even worth that much of a discussion, but it's just something to point out. Now, if I rotate it, it maintains it. And so that's pretty much the basics of using a composable alert dialog. And yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much the basics of it. And I hope this helps somebody out. It was a little bit difficult for me to track down the exact way to just do this very simply on the internet without things getting too crazy. And this is a very basic use case for it. And I'll come up with more advanced use cases just to explore things like being able to do inputs and manipulating data. And if that's something that anyone is interested in, then I'll probably do it anyway, but definitely let me know if you have any other use cases that you'd want to see explored in a video format. All right, thank you.